You wake up, and before you even open your eyes, you already feel it. That invisible weight pressing against your chest. Not pain, not fear. Just the silent heaviness of another day starting exactly like the last one. For a few seconds you lie still, hoping maybe this time it'll feel different. But the same thoughts arrive like clockwork. The promises you made, the plans you postponed, the dreams still sitting on the shelf. You tell yourself you'll get to them soon. You always do. That's the strange thing about human beings. We're the only creatures who can imagine entire futures and then choose not to live them. We can picture ourselves running, building, creating, changing, and then spend another hour staring at a glowing screen, convincing ourselves that thinking about it counts for something. We call it resting, planning, researching. Deep down, we know it's waiting. Everyone does it. The student delaying the assignment, the worker delaying the dream, the parent delaying self-care, the artist delaying the first brushstroke. It's not a lack of ability. It's the fear of what happens after we begin. Because beginning means risk. It means proof. Once we start, the fantasy of what could be meets the reality of what is, and that collision scares us. So we wait. We decorate the waiting room of our lives with little distractions. We tell ourselves stories. I need more time. I need more experience. I need someone to believe in me first. And the world, kind and cruel at once, keeps moving without us. Days turn into months. Months blur into years. And one morning we realize the future we kept saving for someday has quietly become yesterday. But procrastination isn't laziness. It's protection. It's our mind saying, if we never start, we never fail. The tragedy is that we also never live. Look around. Every person you admire once stood exactly where you are now, at the edge of indecision. They felt the same uncertainty, the same self-doubt, the same temptation to wait for perfect timing. The difference is that they stopped waiting. They stepped forward shaking, unsure, imperfect, but moving. And movement changed everything. You don't need grand gestures to change a life. You need small, honest motion. The first workout that lasts 10 minutes. The first paragraph that makes no sense. The first awkward conversation that finally tells the truth. The first yes whispered under your breath when fear expects you to say no. The mind resists at first. It will whisper that it's pointless, that one step can't possibly matter. But every great structure is built one brick at a time, and no brick ever looks impressive by itself. The magic isn't in the single act. It's in the momentum that single act creates. The reason we suffer when we delay isn't just guilt. It's the weight of unused energy. Human beings are built to build. When we don't, that creative force turns inward. It becomes anxiety, frustration, boredom. We think we're tired, but we're actually underused. We don't need more sleep. We need more meaning, and meaning doesn't come from comfort. It comes from contribution. It comes from doing something. Anything that reminds us we still have influence over the world around us. Wash the dish. Write the message. Fix the small thing you've been ignoring. These acts look insignificant, but they whisper a powerful sentence to your nervous system. I can make change happen. That's how the weight begins to lift. Not all at once, but piece by piece. There's a quiet peace that appears when you keep even one promise to yourself. Nobody else needs to know. You just feel it in your bones. I said I would, and I did. That peace is better than any applause. It's the foundation of self-respect. And self-respect is the root of momentum. You'll relapse. Everyone does. You'll waste hours again, fall into old loops, tell yourself old stories. When that happens, don't turn the slip into an identity. You are not your delay. You are your restart. The moment you catch yourself drifting and gently steer back, that's discipline. That's growth. Sometimes progress feels like crawling through mud. You move inches and wonder if it counts. It counts. Every inch counts because every inch changes the direction of your life. A plane off course by 1 degree ends up in a different country. A person off course by one choice ends up in a different life. You'll learn that guilt is heavy but useless. It chains you to yesterday. Forgiveness, though, it's lighter and faster. When you forgive yourself, you reclaim energy for the next try. Forgiveness doesn't erase accountability. It fuels it. It says, I can still fix this. One day, you'll notice you no longer need huge inspiration to act. You'll act because action has become normal. That's the secret no one tells you. Consistency beats intensity. The world celebrates grand gestures, but your future is quietly built by the small ones repeated daily. And in that repetition, something sacred happens. You stop chasing motivation and start becoming it. People around you begin to notice. Not because you brag, but because your energy changes. You radiate possibility. You become proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things simply by refusing to quit. When the next wave of doubt comes, and it will, remember this. You've been here before, and you moved anyway. That's evidence. Evidence that the fear isn't fatal, that discomfort won't kill you, that momentum is always one choice away. The human story is the same everywhere. Someone faces a wall, feels too small to climb it, and then takes one shaky step. The wall doesn't disappear, but it shrinks. Step by step, the impossible becomes routine. That's not magic. That's biology. Your brain rewires itself around what you repeat. What once felt impossible becomes familiar. If you keep waiting for confidence to strike, you'll wait forever. Confidence doesn't arrive first. It's delivered as a receipt after you act. You do the thing, and somewhere afterward, courage shows up saying, "See, you survived. You are allowed to start small. You are allowed to start late. You are allowed to be both terrified and determined." The world doesn't require perfection. It just requires participation. When you finally move, even a little, you'll feel the difference. Time slows down. The noise in your head quiets. You remember what presence feels like, because movement brings you back to the moment. You can't procrastinate while you're fully here. Procrastination only lives in the future. That's the great irony. The cure for delay is not more planning. It's presence. When you give full attention to the next breath, the next line, the next step, fear loses its script. It can't perform without an audience in tomorrow. The weight you feel each morning isn't proof of weakness. It's proof that you care. The only people who feel nothing are the ones who've given up entirely. You haven't. The heaviness is love with nowhere to go yet. So give it somewhere. Channel it. Let it move through your hands, your voice, your effort. Turn worry into work, self-doubt into sweat, hesitation into motion. You don't need to see the finish line. Just trust the path will appear under your feet once you start walking. Because the truth is simple and merciful at once. The hardest part of any journey is the first honest step. After that, the road starts teaching you how to walk it, and when night comes, you'll lie down different. The weight won't vanish, but it will rest easier. It's no longer the weight of delay. It's the weight of becoming. The same pressure that once crushed you is now the pressure that shapes you. Tomorrow will bring its tests, its noise, its temptations to drift again. But tonight, you've proven something. You can move. You can begin. You can carry the human fire, the one that lives inside every single person on this planet, waiting for oxygen called action. That fire is the same in a child learning to walk, a worker daring to dream bigger, an elder rediscovering purpose. It belongs to all of us, and every time one person decides to start despite the fear, the world gets a little brighter. There comes a moment in every life when the silence gets too loud. You're sitting somewhere, maybe in your car after work, maybe on the edge of your bed at 2 a.m. And the question hits you out of nowhere. Is this it? Is this really all I'm going to do with my time here? It's not anger, it's not panic, it's clarity. For the first time, you see that the years ahead will look exactly like the years behind, unless something changes. And that realization burns hotter than any fear. That's the turning point. It rarely comes with fireworks. Most times it comes quietly, disguised as exhaustion. You're just tired. Tired of your own excuses, tired of waiting for motivation, tired of living below the line of your own potential. And right there, in that tiredness, is the beginning of everything. Because fatigue isn't always a signal to rest. Sometimes it's your soul saying, "I'm done living like this." You don't need to rebuild your life overnight. You just need one act of rebellion against the inertia. Maybe you go for that first run. Maybe you finally sit down and send that email, clean that space, draw that first line, write that first paragraph. The act itself is small, almost laughable, but what it represents is enormous. It says, I refuse to keep circling the same day forever. The first few tries are messy. You'll make plans that collapse before noon. You'll stumble, forget, fall back. That's not failure. That's friction. It's what happens anytime a body changes direction. You're not broken. You're rewiring. Somewhere in that repetition, the strange thing happens. The action starts to feel easier than the avoidance. You realize the pain of staying stuck actually weighs more than the effort of moving. And that's when you start to crave motion. Not because it's exciting, but because it feels like oxygen after years of holding your breath. People will tell you discipline is about self-control, but it's really about self-respect. It's the quiet way you tell yourself, I matter enough to keep promises to me. Every small promise kept. The glass of water you drink, the workout you finish, the call you make, is a brick in the rebuild of your identity. At first, it looks like nothing. Then suddenly there's a foundation strong enough to stand on. You'll notice how much noise disappears once you start moving. The jealousy fades because you're too busy building. The anxiety softens because your body remembers what agency feels like. Even fear starts to change shape. It doesn't vanish. It just becomes background hum instead of the main soundtrack. There will be days you relapse into the scroll, into the couch, into the endless tomorrows. Don't let that guilt drown you. Every restart counts. The comeback is part of the rhythm. Momentum doesn't demand perfection. It demands persistence. The people who make it through the turning point aren't superhuman. They just keep coming back. They fail forward. They fall in love with the process more than the result. Because once you trust the process, the result loses its grip on your mood. Something else shifts too. You stop needing external permission to chase what lights you up. The applause that once drove you starts to feel hollow. You realize validation from others can never replace respect from yourself. That's when you become unstoppable. Not because you're fearless, but because you're not performing anymore. You're genuine. And genuine effort never runs out of energy. It recycles itself. You'll start meeting people differently. Instead of competing, you'll connect. Because when you're no longer drowning, you have space to lift others. Helping someone else move forward becomes another way of fueling your own momentum. That's the paradox of progress. The more you give, the more you grow. You discover that growth was never supposed to be selfish. It was supposed to be contagious. Every act of courage in you gives permission to someone else who's watching silently, wondering if they can begin too. And somewhere deep inside, the self-doubt that used to roar becomes quiet curiosity. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I learn? That's the moment fear loses its monopoly. By now, the pattern's visible. Small actions create trust. Trust creates consistency. Consistency creates identity. Identity creates peace. Peace doesn't mean easy days. It means you stop fighting yourself. You can be tired and still move. You can be scared and still choose. You no longer wait for perfect weather because you've learned storms are part of the training. Then life starts to echo your effort. Opportunities appear that never showed up when you were standing still. The world isn't rewarding you for luck. It's simply responding to energy finally in motion. And one morning you'll wake up and notice something almost unbelievable. You like yourself again. Not because you achieved everything, but because you're living in alignment. You said you'd try, and you are trying. That's the secret nobody advertises. Liking yourself is what motivation actually feels like. The turning point isn't a single event. It's a continuous choice. Every sunrise gives you the same question. Who will you be today? You don't need to answer it perfectly. You just need to answer it honestly. Because honesty leads to momentum, and momentum, over time, turns ordinary lives into extraordinary stories. You reach a place one day where the noise fades. The constant hum of "I should," "I must," "I need to be more" begins to lose its edge. The world is still spinning fast, but you start walking slower. You breathe differently. You realize you're no longer chasing every spark. You've learned to keep your own flame alive. Becoming unstoppable isn't about endless motion. It's about steady motion. It's the art of living at a pace that's sustainable, not frantic. It's what happens when effort and peace stop being enemies and start being partners. You begin to see that life isn't a sprint from goal to goal. It's a rhythm. There are seasons of growth, seasons of grind, and seasons of quiet. You stop shaming yourself for the quiet ones. You understand now that silence doesn't mean stagnation. Even the seed rests underground before it breaks through the soil. When you've lived long enough, you notice how often the world confuses loud with strong. But strength can be silent. It's the calm in the eyes of someone who's seen storms and knows they'll pass. It's the quiet in the hands of someone who's done the work and doesn't need to prove it anymore. That's the strength you start to grow into, the one that doesn't shout. At this stage, success isn't about applause. It's about alignment. You start asking different questions. Not, "How much did I achieve?" but, "How much of what I achieved still feels true to me?" You start pruning instead of piling. You let go of commitments that look good but feel wrong. You stop collecting goals like trophies and start choosing the ones that feel sacred. And then something surprising happens. You get lighter. The weight that used to live on your shoulders starts to slide away. You realize it was never the work that made you tired, it was pretending. Pretending to care about things that didn't matter, pretending you were fine when you weren't, pretending the rush was worth the emptiness that followed. You drop the act, and peace takes its place. You notice you don't talk about balance anymore because you're living it. Balance isn't splitting your energy evenly between everything. It's giving the right energy to the right things. Some days that's work, some days it's rest, some days it's love. You stop keeping score because life isn't a math problem. It's a melody. The person you were a few years ago might not recognize you. That's okay. Growth means outgrowing. You stop needing to explain your evolution to people who only knew your earlier chapters. You honor them, thank them, and move on. Not with bitterness, but with quiet gratitude for the role they played in your becoming. The deeper you go, the more you understand that peace isn't found in perfect circumstances. It's found in perfect acceptance. Acceptance of what is, of what was, and of what might never be. You stop fighting reality and start working with it. That's where your power multiplies. You no longer wake up chasing motivation. You wake up anchored in intention. You do the work not because you're desperate to arrive, but because showing up feels like respect. For the opportunity, for the day, for yourself. Some mornings will still be heavy. The mind will still whisper old doubts. The difference now is that you don't believe every thought. You've learned to treat your mind like weather. It changes. Sometimes sunny, sometimes gray. You let it pass. You keep walking. That's what unstoppable really means. Not that you never pause, never cry, never falter, but that you always return. Every time you're knocked down by life, you don't rebuild from zero. You rebuild from wisdom. You carry lessons now. You carry tools. There's a stillness that arrives when you stop proving and start living. You don't need validation to confirm your value. You know what you've survived, what you've built, and what you continue to give. That knowing sits quietly behind your smile. It doesn't need to be broadcast. You start paying attention to simple things again. How coffee smells at sunrise. How rain sounds against the window. How laughter feels lighter when you're not performing it. Gratitude stops being a list and starts being a way of breathing. You realize the small things were never small. They were the whole point, and maybe, for the first time, you forgive yourself completely. For every delay, every false start, every wrong turn. You see now that all of it was the training ground. You couldn't have skipped those parts and still become this version of you. The person you are now was carved by the mistakes you once cursed. So you start treating the present as sacred. Every conversation matters. Every breath matters. Every ordinary day becomes extraordinary just because you're paying attention. That's what awakening really feels like. Not euphoria, but presence. You understand now that being unstoppable doesn't mean never stopping. It means never staying stopped. It's the resilience to rise quietly every time life knocks the wind out of you. It's the decision to keep loving, creating, and believing even after you've been hurt. And with that understanding, something changes in how you see other people too. You become gentler. You stop judging others for where they are in their process because you remember how lost you once were. You trade criticism for compassion. You realize everyone's fighting an invisible war inside their own mind, and kindness is the only language strong enough to cut through the noise. The fire that once burned for recognition now burns for contribution. You want to build, help, uplift. You stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I give?" Not out of martyrdom, but because giving feels like breathing. It keeps the soul alive, and in giving, you find abundance. The paradox reveals itself. The less you hoard energy, the more it multiplies. Joy shared doubles. Wisdom taught expands. Even pain, when spoken honestly, becomes healing for someone else. That's the quiet revolution of becoming unstoppable. You stop being the main character of a lonely story and start becoming part of the human chorus. You recognize the same hunger, the same fear, the same hope in every pair of eyes. You realize that success isn't a race, it's a ripple. Every time you rise, you create permission for others to rise too. The light you carry becomes a lantern for someone still trapped in their own shadow. That's the legacy worth chasing. Not fame, not perfection, but the unseen echo of lives you touched just by living authentically. There will still be days when you stumble. The difference now is that you no longer call it the end. You treat every stumble as a step. You fall forward, learn, and keep the rhythm. Falling becomes part of walking. You stop counting failures. You start counting lessons, because you see how much life has taught you quietly between the wins. Every heartbreak gave you empathy. Every rejection gave you redirection. Every delay gave you depth. The older you grow in your purpose, the more you realize that the world was never punishing you. It was preparing you. When peace becomes your standard, chaos loses its thrill. You stop confusing adrenaline for aliveness. You start valuing quiet mornings, honest conversations, slow progress. You understand that joy doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums. Sometimes it's just the steady heartbeat of contentment. There's a maturity in this phase that can't be faked. You don't chase comparison anymore. You can appreciate someone else's success without questioning your own path. You realize we're all running different races with clocks that don't sync. Someone's Chapter 10 can't measure your Chapter 3. And that thought no longer stings. It soothes. You also learn to pause on purpose. Not because you're lost, but because even warriors need rest. You stop treating rest like weakness. You understand that recovery is strategy. That pausing doesn't reset your progress. It strengthens it. Rest is how you sharpen the sword before another climb. Becoming unstoppable means understanding cycles. Some days are build days. Others are rebuild days. You honor both. You no longer demand perfection from yourself. You demand presence. You show up honestly instead of perfectly, and that honesty spills into everything. You speak clearer. You love slower but deeper. You work less frantically but with more focus. You realize the goal isn't to impress the world, it's to impact it. And impact rarely requires shouting. It requires substance. Somewhere along the journey, fear changes shape again. It doesn't vanish. It becomes familiar, like an old companion who walks beside you but no longer controls the map. You glance at it, acknowledge it, and keep walking. Because you finally understand that courage was never the absence of fear. It's moving while fear rides shotgun, and when you start moving from that space, where you're no longer motivated by guilt or fear, but by gratitude, the whole texture of your days changes. Even the challenges feel meaningful. You stop dreading Mondays because each new start is an opportunity to test your resilience. Your definition of success evolves, too. It's no longer about numbers, titles, or applause. It's about the quiet feeling that you're living aligned with your values, that you're not betraying yourself for approval, that you can look in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. The human fire doesn't roar forever. It glows steady. It becomes warmth that sustains you through long nights. You tend to it carefully. You feed it with truth, with humility, with gratitude. And in return, it lights every dark corridor you once feared. You begin to teach without realizing it. Your calm becomes contagious. People sense stability around you and wonder what changed. You don't hand them slogans, you hand them your story. Because authenticity teaches better than advice ever could. Then there's compassion, the kind born from experience. You've seen how fragile the human spirit can be, so you stop judging brokenness. You realize healing isn't linear, and kindness costs nothing. You give it freely, even when it's not returned. That generosity of spirit makes you unshakable. You no longer chase happiness. You cultivate peace. Happiness depends on circumstance. Peace depends on character. Peace can survive a bad day. It can survive loss. It can survive change. It's what remains when everything else is uncertain. That's what becoming unstoppable really means. You've built an internal environment that outer chaos can't easily break. You've turned your mind from a battlefield into a home. You'll still face storms, of course. Life never stops throwing them. But storms no longer scare you. They remind you of your strength. You've seen yourself rebuild before, so even destruction carries a strange familiarity. You stand in the rain and know. It will pass, and you'll still be here. There comes a point where you realize that everything you once called discipline is now just your nature. You don't have to force yourself anymore. You do it because it feels right, like breathing. The habits you built have become muscle memory for the soul. Morning comes, and instead of dread, there's steadiness. The noise of doubt might still whisper, but it no longer owns the room. You greet it like an old friend who lost his power. You move anyway because movement is who you are now, and that movement isn't about chasing more. It's about maintaining harmony. You've stopped measuring your worth by output. You've learned that real productivity isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what matters deeply and doing it well. You'd rather give your whole heart to one thing than fragments of yourself to many. The older versions of you were always chasing horizons. You kept thinking the next milestone would finally make you enough. But the truth unfolded slowly. You were already enough, even when you were lost. The milestones just helped you see it. That realization changes how you treat yourself. You start talking softer inside your head. The voice that used to criticize becomes one that coaches. You still demand greatness, but not through shame, through love. Because you've learned that shame drains and love fuels. You start caring for the vessel that carries you, not out of vanity, but respect. You rest because you deserve to function. You eat well because you want to feel alive. You move your body because gratitude demands expression. And you start listening, not just to your mind, but to the quiet signals of your heart. When something feels heavy for too long, you no longer force it. You step back. You let intuition breathe. You understand that letting go isn't quitting. It's clearing space for what's meant to arrive. That awareness ripples into your relationships. You stop trying to be understood by everyone because you understand yourself. You stop over-explaining your piece. You realize that people who genuinely see you won't need the full presentation. They'll feel it in your presence. The world begins to mirror your calm. Even in chaos, people find comfort standing next to you. They can sense that you're not reacting anymore. You're responding. Reaction is noise. Response is art. Sometimes, during long walks or late nights, memories of your old life flash back. All the worry, all the noise, all the proving. You smile at it. You don't hate that version of yourself. You thank them for surviving, for carrying you here. You realize they did their best with what they knew. You forgive them. and that forgiveness frees you again. The deeper you go, the more simple life becomes. Not easier, but simpler. You learn that peace and simplicity are siblings. When you stop complicating everything, energy flows. You find that half your suffering came from resistance, from fighting what already was. Now, when things break, you repair or release. Both bring relief. The storms still come. But now, when thunder rolls, you don't rush for shelter. You stand and watch the rain, because you know storms don't destroy what's rooted, they just test it. And you're rooted now. There's a beauty in becoming weatherproof. Not hardened, just grounded. The wind can bend you, but not break you. You have roots in patience and branches in hope. And from that posture, life feels different. You see struggle as sculpting, not punishment. You trust timing more than ever. You start finding joy in being unnoticed. The world applauds noise, but you're learning to love quiet victories. The days you stay consistent, the conversations you mend, the moments you choose grace instead of anger. You realize the best parts of your story will never trend. They'll be lived, and that's enough. There will come a night when you sit alone, lights low, no music, no noise, just you and the hum of the world outside. And you'll realize you've arrived somewhere you were chasing for years. Not a place on a map, not a number on a screen, but a state of being. You'll feel it first in your breath. Steady, full, unhurried. You'll notice that nothing inside you is rushing anymore. The war has gone quiet. You won't need anyone to clap for you. You'll know. You'll remember the days when getting out of bed was a battle, when you fought with yourself for every inch of progress. And now, here you are. Same person, different energy. You've learned that peace was never the absence of problems. It was the ability to stay open in the middle of them. You'll see that the purpose of all that struggle wasn't achievement. It was awareness. The hard seasons weren't blocking your path. They were your path. Without them, you wouldn't have built the patience to listen, the strength to wait, the faith to keep walking when nothing made sense. You begin to love the ordinary again. You find holiness in washing dishes, in answering a message kindly, in watching sunlight move across a room. These small acts are proof that you're present, that you no longer need fireworks to feel alive. You also realize how much of your life was spent trying to earn rest, as if you had to pay for peace with exhaustion. Not anymore. Rest is no longer a reward. It's part of the rhythm. You've learned that stopping can be sacred. When people ask what changed, you'll smile because you can't explain it quickly. How do you summarize years of unlearning? How do you describe the way the noise in your head softened into clarity? You'll just say, "I started listening," and leave it at that. Because listening, truly listening, became your superpower. You listen to your body when it whispers for care. You listen to your heart when it nudges toward purpose. You listen to silence when it invites you to pause. That's how you stay aligned now, not through control, but through connection. And one morning you'll wake up, look at the sunrise, and realize that becoming unstoppable never meant becoming unbreakable. It meant becoming whole, allowing cracks, scars, and light to coexist. You'll stop chasing a version of yourself without pain. Instead, you'll embrace the version who learned how to carry it with grace. This is freedom, not the loud kind that shouts across mountains, but the quiet kind that sits cross-legged inside you, unbothered by storms. It's the peace of knowing that whatever comes, you've already faced worse and lived. You walk differently now. Shoulders lower, eyes softer, steps deliberate. You move through the world like someone who finally trusts their own timing. You no longer sprint, you glide, because you know everything that's meant for you moves at the same speed as your growth. And when doubt visits, because it always will, you greet it like weather. Welcome back, you'll think. You can sit, but you don't get to drive. That's the quiet confidence of someone who's tested their resilience and knows it holds. You'll start building again. Not from scarcity, but from overflow. You'll create, help, teach, love. Not because you're trying to prove worth, but because you have more than enough to share. the circle completes itself. You become what you once needed. If you ever wonder what it means to have made it, this is it. It's not a headline. It's the moment you realize you'd still choose your life even without applause. You'd still choose the work, the people, the slow mornings, the nights of reflection. You'd still choose you. You begin to understand the deeper rhythm of time, that there are no final arrivals, only ongoing awakenings. Every chapter prepares the next. Every ending plants a beginning. The fire you built isn't a single flame. It's a lineage of sparks passed from one moment to the next. You remember all the people who helped you along the way. The ones who believed in you, the ones who doubted you, even the ones who hurt you. You see them all as teachers now. Gratitude becomes your armor. Nothing can pierce someone who's thankful for everything. The best part? You start enjoying mystery again. You stop needing to know every answer. You trust that life reveals itself in the right order. Curiosity replaces control. Wonder returns. And in that wonder, you realize that unstoppable isn't something you become once. It's something you keep becoming. Every sunrise offers a new invitation to rise. Every sunset asks, "Did you live today in truth?" Some days, the answer will be yes. Some days, not quite. Either way, you'll rest knowing tomorrow will bring another chance. You've learned that progress doesn't disappear. It rests in your posture, your presence, your patience. It's in how you breathe through conflict, how you speak to yourself when no one's listening, how you stay kind when kindness costs you. And maybe, just maybe, the truest strength isn't visible. Maybe it's in the way you carry invisible battles without bitterness. In the way you still choose softness after being hardened by life. In the way you smile without needing a reason. One day, years from now, you'll look back and realize this was the real success story. Not the trophies, not the moments of recognition, but the quiet evenings when you refused to give up on yourself. The mornings you tried again after disappointment. The nights you forgave what you couldn't change. That's what makes you unstoppable. The gentle persistence of a heart that keeps choosing to heal. So, if you're listening to this right now, wherever you are in the world, take a breath. Let it fill you. Let it remind you that as long as you're breathing, you're still in the game. You're still learning, still growing, still writing chapters that haven't been told yet. You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove. You don't need to know exactly how it ends. You just need to keep walking. Slowly. Honestly, faithfully. Because the path reveals itself to those who keep moving with open eyes and steady hearts. And when you do, you'll realize the destination was never a place. It was this, peace in motion.